Well, for more on the impact on the U.S. housing market, let's get to Darren Blomquist, who is Senior Vice President at Attom Data Solutions. He joins us live from Irvine, California. And thank you for joining us, Darren. First and foremost, our hearts go out to those people who are dealing with the aftermath of these storms, trying to rebuild their homes and their lives in many ways. And eventually, we will start looking at the toll on the business side of things here when it comes to exactly the impact on the housing market. How severe and in what way do you think it's going to impact this sector?
Yes, I think we'll see an immediate impact on home sales. We're already seeing that in the numbers that are coming in for August. What we're projecting, not all the numbers have come in from the public record data that we collect, but we're projecting a 27% decrease in home sales year over year in August, and that's going to have an impact on the industry, the housing industry in general. However, I think that will recover, that will bounce back. What we've seen in past situations, the most recent being Baton Rouge, although that wasn't a hurricane last year, the flooding, we did see a pretty quick bounce back in the next couple of months in home sales. Those will recover. But what we started to see in the next several months was a decrease in home prices as more of the sales are distressed sales that are hitting the market because of all this devastation that we're seeing. And then the other thing that we saw in Baton Rouge is just looking at a pattern of something that happened about a year ago, is there was about a 4-month reprieve, but then we started to see the foreclosures and the delinquencies hit. We saw foreclosures continue to be down for about 4 months following the Baton Rouge floods, and we'd expect something similar in Houston, but then in January of this year, we saw a 128% increase in foreclosure activity in Baton Rouge. And typically what you see after a natural disaster like this is the banks will give some type of foreclosure moratorium, but you do tend to see an upswing eventually in those delinquencies as some of these homeowners just really are not motivated to keep paying that mortgage.
And this is coming at a time in an area that many were already looking at some concerns around foreclosures. Isn't that right? I mean, to what extent would you say, that, especially looking at the Houston area, is this simply exacerbating a problem?
Yeah, what's interesting in Houston is we were already seeing signs of distress. And in fact, year to date through August, really before the hurricane hit at all, we were seeing a 28% increase in foreclosure starts, properties starting the foreclosure process in Houston. And that's counter to the national trend. Nationally, foreclosure activity is going down. It was down 19% year to date through August. And so there is some underlying weakness in Houston beyond just this hurricane. And of course, the hurricane effects are unfortunately going to exacerbate that, we believe, going forward. Now, we'll actually probably see a reprieve over the next 90 to 120 days at least. But eventually those, we would expect to see those delinquencies go up.
And you did discuss that in previous storms. We saw some homes listing at lower prices, distressed sales, if you will, but there are undoubtedly going to be people who wait a bit longer to list their homes. They want to get them repaired. They want to put in some construction to the home before they sell them. So at that point, are we going to see all of a sudden a big jump in supply at some point in the future? And when would that take place?
Yeah, it's a little hard to predict that, but what we saw in Baton Rouge, there was just a couple months of decreases. We saw a 20% decrease in home sales immediately following the flooding, but then by November of that year, just a few months after those August floods, we did see a 43% jump in home sales. But November was also when we saw home prices start to decrease, and we've now actually seen 10 consecutive months of home price decreases in Baton Rouge compared to a year ago, and that was following about a 5-year trend upward in home prices. Now, Houston is a much more diverse and bigger, diverse economy, bigger metro area than Baton Rouge, so we can't compare it completely, but we would expect to see some type of similar pattern. Home sales bounce back pretty quickly. If people are going to decide to sell, they're going to sell, I think, in a lot of cases, in just a few months.
Darren, I'm afraid that's all we have time for on this, but thank you very much for bringing us that perspective. That is Darren Blomquist joining us from Attom Data Solutions.